You're listening to the Okanagan Reader, where we present readings of short stories and other works that have been released under a Creative Commons license by their creators. In keeping with the license, these recordings are released under a matching license. You are free to listen to and share these readings as set out in their version of the Creative Commons license. This reading is the conclusion of Flying Lessons, a short story in the collection Stranger Things Happen by Kelly Link. 17. Bon House. The summer wore on and the nights were longer and darker. Humphrey came on the train from Lucar's every weekend, and at the beginning of August they climbed to the top of Arthur's Seat for a picnic supper. Edinburgh was crouched far below them, heaped up like a giant's bones, the green cloak of grass his bed, the castle his crown. Ravens stalked the hill, pecking at the grass, but Humphrey ignored them. Next weekend Tiny says I can make my solo flight, he said, if the weather's good. I wish I could see you, June said, but Lily will kill me if I'm not here to help. Things get loopy right before the festival. Already the bed and breakfast was full. Lily had even put a couple from Strasbourg into June's attic room. June was sleeping on a cot in the kitchen. "'S all right," Humphrey said. "I'd probably be even more nervous with you there. I'll come on the 8 o'clock train and meet you in Waverley Station. We'll celebrate. Go out and see something." June nodded and shivered, leaning against him. He said, "Are you cold? Take my sweater. I've got something else for you, too." He pulled a flat oblong package from his pack and gave it to her along with the sweater. "It's a book," June said. "Is it something by your aunt?" She tore off the paper, the wind snatching it from her hands. It was a children's book, with a picture on the cover of a man with flaming hair, a golden sun behind him. D'Aulaire's Greek mythology? He didn't look at her. "Read it and tell me what you think." June flipped through it. "Well, at least it's got pictures," she said. It was getting too dark to look at the book properly. The city, the path leading back down the hill, were purply dark. The hill they sat on seemed to be about to float away on a black sea. The ravens were movable blots of inky stain, and the wind lifted and beat with murmurous breath at the blades of grass and pinion feathers. She pulled the blue sweater tight around her shoulders. "What will we do at the end of summer?" Humphrey asked. He picked up one of her hands and looked into it as if he might see the future in the cup of her palm. "Normally, I go to Aunt Prune's for a few weeks. She runs a clinic outside of London called Bon House, for alcoholics and depressed rich people. I help the groundkeepers." "Oh," June said. "I don't want to go," Humphrey said. "That's the thing. I want to be with you. Maybe go to Greece. My father lives there, sometimes. I want to see him. Just once I'd like to see him. Would you go with me?" "Is that why you gave me this?" she said, frowning and holding up the book of mythology. "It's not exactly a guidebook." "More like family history," he said. The ravens muttered and cackled. "Have you ever dreamed you could fly? I mean, with wings?" "I've never even been in a plane," June said. He told her something wonderful. 18. Why I Write. You may very well ask what the goddess of love is doing in St. Andrews writing trashy romances. Adapting. Some of us have managed better than others, of course. Prune, with her clinic and her patented pomegranate weight loss system, good for the health and the spirits. Di has her bakery. Minnie is more or less a recluse. She makes up crossword puzzles and designs knitting patterns, and feuds with prominent classic scholars via the mail. No one has seen Paul in ages. He can't stand modern music, he says. He's living somewhere in Kensington with a nice deaf man. Zeus and that malevolent bird-brained bitch are still married. Can you believe it? As if the world would stop spinning if she admitted that the whole thing was a mistake. It infuriates her to see anyone else having fun, especially her husband. We've never gotten on well. She fights with everyone sooner or later, which is why most of us are exiled to this corner of the world. I miss the sun, but never the company. 19. An unkindness of ravens. June waited at Waverley Station for 3.5 hours. The fringe was in full swing, and performers in beads and feather masks dashed past her, chasing a wind-blown kite shaped like a wing. They smelled of dust and sweat and beer. They looked at her oddly, she thought, as they ran by. The kite blew towards her again, low on the ground, and she stuck out her foot. The kite lifted over her in a sudden gust of wind. She rested her head in her hands. Someone nearby laughed, insinuating and hoarse, and she looked up to see one of the kite-chasers standing next to her. He was winding string in his hand, bringing the kite down. Bright eyes gleamed at her like jet buttons above a yellow papier-mâché beak. "What's the matter, little thief?" the peacock said. "Lose something?" Another man, in crow black, sat down on the bench beside her. He said nothing, and his pupils were not round, but elongated and flat like those of an owl. June jumped up and ran. She dodged raucous strangers with glittering eyes, whose clothing had the feel of soft spiky down, whose feet were scaly and knobbed, and struck sparks from the pavement. They put out arms to stop her, and their arms were wings, their fingers feathers. She swung wildly at them and ran on. On Queen Street she lost them in a crowd, but she kept on running anyway. Lily was sitting in the parlor when she got home. "Humphrey's Aunt Rose called," she said without preamble. "There's been an accident." "What?" June said. Her chest heaved up and down. She thought she felt the tickle of feathers in her lungs. She thought she might throw up. His plane crashed. A flock of birds flew into the propeller. He died almost instantly. "He's not dead," June said. Lily didn't say anything. Her arms were folded against her body as if she were afraid they might extend, unwanted, towards her daughter. "He was a nice boy," she said finally. "I need to go up to my room," June said. Of course he wasn't dead. She'd read the book. He'd explained the whole thing to her. When you're immortal, you don't die. Half immortal, she corrected herself, so maybe half dead. She could live with that. Lily said, "The woman in room 5 left this afternoon. I haven't cleaned it yet, but I thought we might move the guests in your room. I'll help you." "No," June said. "I'll do it." She hesitated. "Thanks, Lily." "I'll make up a pot of tea then," Lily said, and went into the kitchen. June took the ring of keys from the wall and went up to her room. She took the blue sweater out of the cupboard and put it on. She picked up the bottle of perfume, and then she paused. She bent and thumbed open the suitcase of the Strasbourg honeymooners, reaching down through the folded clothes until her hand closed around a wad of notes. She took them all without counting. The last 2 things she took were the 2 books, D'Aulaire's Greek Myths and Arrows of Beauty. She went out of her room without locking it, down the stairs to room 5. The light didn't come on when she lowered the switch, and things brushed against her, soft and damp. She ran to the drapes and flung them back. The windows swung open, and suddenly the room was full of whiteness. At first, blinking hard, she thought that it was snowing inside. Then she saw that the snowflakes were goosed down. Both pillows had been torn open, and the duvet was rent down the middle. Feathers dusted the floor, sliding across June's palms and her cheek. She choked on a feather, spat it out. As she moved across the room, the feathers clung to her. She felt them, attaching themselves to her back, growing into 2 great wings. "Stop it!" she cried. She opened the Dollaire, flipping past Hera's mad, triumphant face to a picture of rosy-cheeked Venus. She pulled the stopper from the perfume bottle and tipped it over on the drawing. She poured out half the bottle on the book, and behind her someone sneezed. She turned around. It was Humphrey's aunt, Rose Reed. She looked almost dowdy, travel-stained and worn, as if she had come a long way. She didn't look anything like the woman in the picture book. June said, "Where is he?" Aunt Rose shrugged, brushing feathers off her wrinkled coat. "He's gone to see his Aunt Prune, I suppose." "I want to go to him," June said. "I know that's possible." "I suppose you had the classics at your comprehensive," said Aunt Rose, and sneezed delicately like a cat. "Really, these feathers." "I want you to send me to him." "If I sent you there," Rose said, "you might not come back, or he might not want to come back. It isn't my specialty either. If you're so clever, you've figured that out, too." "I know you've sent people there before, so stop playing games with me," June said. "Your mother could tell you what to do when a lover leaves," Rose Reed said in a voice like cream. "So why are you asking my advice?" "She didn't go after him," June shouted. "She had to stay here and look after me, didn't she?" Rose Reed drew herself up very tall, smoothing her hands down her sides. She looked almost pleased. "Very well," she said. "Fortunately, hell is a much cheaper trip, much nearer to hand than Australia. Are you ready? Good. So listen, because I'm only going to tell you this once." 20. Going to Hell. Instructions and Advice. If you don't let the sweater fall from your hands, if you follow the sleeve until it is only yarn, it will lead you to him. He won't be as you remember him. He's been eating his memories to keep warm. He is not asleep, but if you kiss him, you'll wake him up, just like the fairy tales. His lips will be cold at first. Say to him, "Follow me, and unravel the right arm of the sweater. It will take you to a better place, little thief. If you do it right and don't look back, then you can steal him out of the bone house." June stared instead at the bird cage, gilt and forlorn upon its single hinged leg. Down was caught like smoke in a sieve in the grill of the cage. "What now?" she said. "Do you disappear in a puff of smoke, or wave a wand? Can I just leave?" "Not through the door," Rose said. "It's time you had your flying lessons." She stepped upon the window-sill, crouching in her coat like a great black wing beneath the weight of the moon. She held out her hand to June. "Come on, are you afraid?" June took her hand. "I won't be afraid," she said. She climbed up on the sill beside Rose, and pointed her shoes toward the moon, away from the scratch of quills against the walls and ceiling. She didn't look back, but stepped off the edge of the known world.